This is the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast, where we share the stories of locals across the country who took that empty lot or that old building and turned it into something awesome that their community needs. I'm Kristi Kandel, and I've been a real estate developer my entire career. My co-host Raphael is a commercial broker, and together we're sharing the stories of locals making a huge impact on their communities. And what we've learned is you don't need millions in the bank or decades of experience to get started. You just need the confidence, tools, and the right people around you. This podcast is your chance to gain the confidence to get in the game, because real estate development isn't just for the insiders anymore. It's for people like you too.
Welcome to the Local Real Estate Developers Podcast. I'm your host, Raphael, co-host Raphael Collazo. I'm a commercial broker and investor and actually getting into development myself. Here in Louisville, Kentucky, operate kind of regionally, and I'm really excited to be here with my co-host, Kristi, who's an all-star developer herself. So, Kristi, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Kristi Kandel. I am a real estate developer consultant, and I also teach people how to become developers in their own backyard. And today we have a guest. I believe I found Josh Green on LinkedIn because he made a post that drew my attention, and I was like, yes, you are speaking my language. You are talking about local and community development and doing it the right way. So we reached out and started talking, and I absolutely love what you're doing and wanted to share your story and have you tell more about it on our podcast. So Josh, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, we did have a great chat. I think we connected on a lot of different things, and yeah, I'm excited to be here.
That's awesome. Well, first off, I know you're located in Salt Lake City, so if you don't mind kind of telling us a little bit about your backstory, what kind of got you into real estate, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. I got interested in real estate as a kid. My grandparents owned the house next door to us, and I mowed the lawn, and it just like blew my mind that someone was paying them money to live there. And so it's always kind of stuck in my mind. I did a few other different things. My first real estate job was in property management and leasing for a big developer here in Utah. And that was great, kind of boots on the ground experience, but I learned really fast that's not where I wanted to spend my career. I kind of stumbled into multifamily appraisal and consulting, which is where I spent about 11 years of my career. And so I've worked on every type of multifamily housing you can imagine, all over Utah, into Wyoming, Idaho, kind of surrounding states. Half of what we did was appraisal and valuation, and the other half was consulting and working with developers, which was super fun. And I liked that a lot more than the appraisal side and having people mad at me all the time that their value wasn't as high as they thought it should be. And so, yeah, and at a certain point, I just decided like, that's where I want to go. That's the route I want to be. And so I went back to school. The University of Utah here has a Master's of Real Estate Development program. I enrolled as a student. That was a great experience, made a lot of good connections. I'm an adjunct there now. I teach 2 courses up there in the program, which is super fun. Got recruited to go work for a local infill developer here in Utah. After I graduated, was there for about 4.5 years. I think in the time I was there, we built around 1,200 units, everything from single family for sale up to 200 plus unit apartment rental communities. And my role there was really on the finance side, debt and equity underwriting. And I guess it's been about 4 years ago, maybe now, I decided to take a shot at doing my own thing. And so I've got a development company, and we've got a handful of projects that we're working on right now.
That's amazing. So you've been all over the map as far as the real estate career profession is. That's great, though, because it gives you probably unique perspective into how to look at different opportunities, because you have those appraisal side, you got the underwriting side, you've got, even the real estate development background with your curriculum that you went through and everything. So that's great to hear that.
Yeah.
What made you decide to make that transition? Like, what was the logic behind deciding now I want to go out and do my own thing? And then maybe kind of touch on a little bit on the first project that you took on.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a really good question. I first got interested in development just from the consulting side, and I'm kind of a numbers guy. I'm an Excel guy, finance, but I also have this like creative side that likes to create and build things. And to me, it felt like the developers were doing that, as they were taking something that was just a piece of dirt They were creating something from ground up that didn't exist before, that was, became someone's home. And I just thought that part of it was really cool. And yeah, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, do my own thing. And so, at a certain point, I just kind of realized that I've gone kind of as far as I can working for someone else. And if I, want to really go for it, I need to just, quit and do my own thing. And so we did a couple little value add apartment buildings. Our first ground up development we'll be finishing next month. We're leasing up right now. It's a 20-unit townhome rental community in southern Utah. And we're just leasing up, and we'll have our last C of Os by the end of next month. So
that is
That's
awesome.
exciting.
So as you were going through your first project and now you're working for yourself and you have your company, what kind of challenges did you face either through entitlements, permitting, building your team, construction?
It seems like it's mostly been market based. In retrospect, I probably left at a time where I maybe would have been better off to stay working for someone else, just with interest rates, everything else, kind of in flux. And so the hardest part has just been finding deals that work, that we can get capitalized. And we've been lucky to get, one off the ground. We've got a couple others that are close. But yeah, that's been the biggest challenge. That, and then, if you're going development full time and that's your income, your livelihood, it takes a really long time to get from, conception to, where you're actually, making money from the project. And so that was something I hadn't really factored in. And so, I tried to keep the lights on, I guess, through consulting and education and some of those things. But yeah, those have been the biggest challenges is mostly capital raising and just kind of fighting against the market to get something done.
That's awesome. So are the people that you are typically working with on the capital side, are they people that you just develop relationships with over time, or are those people that, are in a mastermind or something like that? I'm just kind of curious more. So
Yeah, no, good question. So the company that I worked for, we worked a lot with big private equity groups, big funds that were doing big projects, and those relationships didn't really transfer over to what I'm doing, which is it's building in a small town, a small size, only 20 units. It doesn't fit what those institutional groups are looking for. We kind of had to go back to square one and start building up a network of a different type of investor that was more, kind of doctors, dentists, people, entrepreneurs, and build our investor base that way, kind of from scratch.
And as you're doing that, because that's a common question that most developers have, I had a couple calls earlier today. They're like, I don't have any money. How do I do this? How did you guys go about building that network from scratch within your community and having that credibility?
Yeah, good question. I think, the team had some good credibility through our past experience. So, I had the kind of the finance, the market analysis side. I'm pretty good at finding opportunities. And then the rest of the team were all experts at what they did. And so we could, to a certain degree, we could kind of lean on that past experience and getting people to see that we had actually done some things. It was still, for a lot of those people, that was one of the first questions that came up. It's like, well, that's great, but like, how many of these have you done on your own? And we had to, we were just honest with them. We haven't done any on our own. This is our first one. And we just had to get people that were comfortable with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure your background and experience, and you have to create that vision and that opportunity. And I mean, I've only ever raised a little bit of money, and most of it's been through friends and family. But creating like a plan of attack and showcasing that you've thought through this process and kind of pitching it and being okay with hearing a lot of no's, because most people are going to say no. And it's funny because one of my buddies, when we were looking to do a project over here, we thought, oh yeah, we're going to be able to raise however much we were trying to raise, like. No problem. We created a list like 50 or 60 people and literally only got like 3 or 4 to bite. And we're just like, man, like, this sucks. Like just constantly, and even people who have said, yeah, if you guys find a good opportunity, let me know about it. And then you put it in front of them. They're like, oh, that's when the rubber meets the road, you realize who actually is going to, make it happen.
Yeah, that's hard. And so, because of that, I've been focusing a lot on LinkedIn. I'm trying to be like really transparent and share, the challenges I'm going through and successes too, and just things that I've learned over my, almost 20 years of being in real estate. We also do local events here. My business partner and I kind of started out as a joke. We both love tacos and we love real estate and getting people together. So we created this event called Taco About Real Estate, where we just order a bunch of tacos and get people together. And that's been really awesome for us. We built this really great community around that. And, part of the reason we did that was just to expand our network and let more people know what we're doing, how they can get involved if they choose to. But yeah, I've spent a lot of time on just kind of networking and letting people know what I do.
Yeah, for sure. And it takes time, to your point. So that's awesome. So, regarding that first project, I mean, what was the reasoning behind the product type you chose? What was the reasoning behind the ultimate, the type of number, the number of units, et cetera, if you could walk through that, and how has that impacted the area that you've ultimately decided to work in?
Yeah, great questions. If you go to my LinkedIn page, you'll see right across the top, I love townhomes. Like that's the product type that I try to build. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think, with where housing prices are right now, we can build a brand new professionally managed unit that's still, significantly less expensive than it would be to buy the exact same thing next door. And so I think there's been a lot of demand towards that type of rental housing. There's a big population that's kind of they've grown out of more traditional smaller apartments. They've got a partner or a spouse or a family or a dog now, and need some more space. And so townhomes work really well for that. They're pretty easy to build comparatively. It's much easier to build than say like a 5/1 podium apartment building. It's just way less complicated. You can finish a building and lease it up while the rest of the project's still being built, which is kind of nice during construction. So yeah, I love townhomes. I guess we picked this area specifically, kind of my market analysis background, because we could see the fundamentals of Cedar City, Utah. It's in southern Utah. There's a university there. It's the fastest growing university in the state. There's a lot of things happening with jobs, and it's just been overlooked by developers and builders in favor of St. George, which is a little bit further south. It has a little warmer weather, and it's kind of a vacation type community. And so that's kind of our perfect scenarios. We can find a place that has good fundamentals, but where it's really been underserved or overlooked. And so, yeah, we found a piece of property to build 20 townhomes on, and we got that one going. And then we bought the property next door to do another 16, which hopefully will start this year. But yeah, that's kind of it.
I love townhomes. They're a great mix of products that you can put into a market to where it's not a single family house, it's not apartments. You have the option. So like if you're doing this townhome build to rent scenario, you could always condo it off and then end up selling them off individually later and have that be a great starter home, which is still probably cheaper than a single family. There's just so many things that you can do with that. And I love the fact of, hey, we picked this community that's kind of been overlooked. And so how would you say bringing a product like this into the community, how do you think that that's impacting it already? Because you do have it leased up and maybe you've heard from tenants or from different city people. How do you think that this will help the community?
Yeah, good question. Well, we're finding out that you try to do the best you can to figure out or guess who your tenant is going to be, and we were being surprised here because almost all of our tenants, they're moving from out of state to Cedar City for work. And that's not something we expected. We thought maybe we'd get people from not so much locals, because we're building a product that's, kind of more expensive and different than what they're used to seeing down there. It costs more in rent. And so we didn't think we'd be getting a whole lot of locals relocating there, but we did think we would pull from like St. George for affordability. And we're not seeing that, but we're seeing all these people come in from out of state that are relocating for work. And I mean, that's 95% of our tenants are in that boat. And then, we did think with the university being there and there being a real shortage of student housing, we knew we didn't want to operate as student housing and rent them furnished and, bedroom leases, semester length leases. But we did design it so that it works well. They work well for roommates. And so we have one unit is occupied by 3 students that they went in together. They all signed together a 1-year lease. And I think with summer, we'll probably start seeing some more of those type of tenants here.
That's awesome. That's great. So regarding that project, so it's a project that's outside of your market. How far away is it relative to where you're currently located?
It's about 3 hours away from where I live.
Okay. Yeah. So that probably necessitated you having to strategically find partners on site to be able to, or on site in the market itself to help with the build. And obviously you're going down, I'm assuming, all the time. And there's probably times where you're like, man, I don't really don't want to make this 3-hour drive and then have to drive back again. And, but it is what it is. But I'm kind of curious about that process of you finding those partners and how you were able to vet them and make sure that you were able to get them
Yeah, really good
on the same
question.
page.
So I happen to have a friend that lives down that way that he and I both left our jobs about the same time. He went to start a semi-custom home building company in southern Utah. He and I have always gotten along really well together. And so he was my first call, hey, can you come up, 40 minutes from St. George where you are to build these 20 units for us. And that's worked out really well. They've been really great. It works out well for them too, because they're trying to expand into Cedar City where we are. And so that's been a really great partnership. It would have been extremely hard to do without having that connection already and their operation already going in that area. We also knew that we wanted to have a bigger management company manage this for us than, there's a handful of management companies there that are local. And we wanted to have someone that was maybe like the next tier up, I guess. And so we interviewed about 4 or 5 different property management companies. Not all of them were willing to go down to Cedar City because of that 3-hour drive, right? And we settled on one, Redstone Residential, that they have a presence in St. George already. And so it was easier for us to kind of share staff and stuff between the other property there. And that's worked out extremely well. Yeah, they've been doing really well there.
That's great. Yeah, and I'm sure that's a big piece of the puzzle too, because obviously you could manage it yourself, but being that far away, it's really hard to make sure that it's done efficiently. And I can speak just having been in the business, like property management is a tough business. So there's a lot of people, and you always hear the saying, it's like no one's going to take care of the property the same way that you will because it's your property. So it's like you've just got to find the strategic partner that's willing to kind of make sure that they accommodate what you need, and hopefully it works out. And it seems like you guys found that, so that's good to hear.
It's probably the least sexy job in real estate, but the most critical to the success of a property.
Operations, absolutely, yeah, because you can build something beautiful. It could be the most beautiful property in the world, but if you don't manage it right, in couple of years, you're gonna be in a situation where the thing doesn't perform like it needs to.
And that's where it makes a ton of sense, where you said you interviewed them, like this is a long-term partnership. You want them to be effectively managing this property. So making sure that before you agree to something that you're getting what you think is the right people on your team. So as you were vetting, because I know a lot of people have questions on out-of-state investing, out-of-market investing, what were the types of things you guys were looking for in a property management company that gave you a comfort of, and clearly it's still playing out, but what were you looking for that gave you peace of mind to land on this group?
Yeah. Just experience. I mean, all the groups we interviewed had a lot of experience. They're all good at what they do. We were looking for someone that had the technology, one piece. What you'll find in this market is there's a whole bunch of kind of smaller management companies, maybe they're real estate offices that happen to do a little bit of property management, and they just don't have the same, or they're not implementing the same type of tools on the marketing and tenant management, all those things as some of this next step up is. And we've really seen that play out, especially on the marketing side. I think one of the reasons that we're getting so many people from out of state is we have a great online presence that other communities for rent in that area don't really have. And so if you're moving to Cedar City from somewhere else, we're really easy to find. We have a professional looking website with all the information there. You can see it's professionally managed. There's virtual tours, just things like that are common, where I live closer to Salt Lake City, but not so much in this market. And I think that's made a huge difference in definitely in the bringing in the out of state tenants.
No, and that makes complete sense. So, regarding the process, because you obviously have talked about, the stress that comes along with developing a property, and if this is your only day-to-day thing, and I know you have consulting on the side which helps supplement some of the income. I mean, it can be a multi-year project. This isn't something that you have an idea, you see a plot of land, you say, okay, I'm going to go build this townhome. And then in 6 months, you got the thing up and running and you've got people signing leases. I mean, this is a long drawn out process. So through that, how do you stay motivated, and maybe any advice you would give to someone who, maybe has that mentality where they thought that it would be a lot simpler than what it is, and maybe you could share some insights as to how you were able to navigate those setbacks, I guess.
Hey, can we chat for a second? Since you're listening to this podcast, you're already thinking like a developer. You see the potential in your community, and you're ready to do more than just watch from the sidelines. That's exactly why we created the Local Developer Vault. It's a free resource full of tools, templates, and trainings to help you take action. And here's the best part. When you sign up, you'll also get access to our local real estate developer community. It's full of people just like you who are making real things happen in their neighborhoods. So don't just listen to the stories. Become the next one that we spotlight on our show. The link in the show notes to unlock the vault and join our movement.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think you just have to know what you're getting into before you make the jump, right? If you want to get into a development and you're expecting, fast money, that's not it, right? It's a long-term and patient career choice. And yeah, you've got to be able to figure out how you're going to feed your family, during the time it takes to get a project off the ground. We started this one, shortly after I quit my job, and now 3 years later, we're just getting to where we're moving tenants in, right? And so yeah, and I think I talk to a lot of people that they want to go out on their own, they want to do their own thing, but it's also perfectly fine to like keep your day job and to do some of these things on the side, right? That's a totally fine way to go about it. And in a lot of ways, it would have been easier for me to do that, right? To keep a day job and kind of that steady income while trying to do some of these things on the side. And so I think you really just need to know what you're getting into and know that that's what you want to do. For me, it's again, it's just fun to create something that wasn't there before. Now I can take my kids down there. We can walk through the buildings. They've seen it when it was a pile of dirt, and now they're seeing it when a building that they can walk through and interact with, and that's really satisfying to be able to do that creative side of it.
Yeah, and the impact you have on the people that live there now. I mean, you've got families and people that are there that now use the thing that you built. So it's a positive impact in their lives.
Yeah, no, it's funny that you mentioned that, because, we did a groundbreaking and when we got the project going, and I had that thought in my mind of like, geez, someone's going to spend their next Christmas here in this place that we're building, and, create their family memories in this place that we're building. And yeah, that's really cool to think about.
That's been one of my favorite parts of building, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial, like whatever it is, you're realizing, wow, like we're creating jobs, we're creating places for people to sleep, we're creating places for people to make memories. And I agree. To me, that is the most fun part. And I love that you touched on that you're advising people that maybe stay in your W-2, because that's a question we get a lot is, can I keep my job and can I do development? And one of the analogies that I like to give is think about all the steps that it would take to flip a house. And you're doing that in maybe a 30, 60, 90-day window. It's very much so all of those same steps, but that's spread out over 3 years. So the reality is you can do a development project while working a W-2, just knowing that you're going to have some longer days. So how do you maybe describe or share with the people you talk to about how they could make that possible, and maybe how having partners in the deal to where you're each kind of doing a little portion of it?
Yeah, that's exactly the direction I was going to go with it is, it's kind of too much for one person to do on their own. I mean, it can be done, but it's definitely more efficient. You get more done. You're able to do more if you have other people involved. And so, the older I get, the more I realize, I just need to stay in my lane and like do what I'm good at, and then find people that I trust and I like working with that are experts in what they do. And so, even going after this full time, having that team is critical of people that you can trust to do what they do best and get things done. And so, if you're working a day job and, you want to do this on the side, I think that's a critical part of it is, kind of assess, what are my skills? What am I good at? How can I bring value to this project? And then also like, what am I lacking? Like, who do I need to go find to kind of fill in the gaps and do some of these things while maybe I am occupied with my day job. And so, yeah, I think having a great team is like critical, regardless if you're keeping your day job or going full time, having that critical team.
Was it the contractor partner that you brought in? So it's you and him, or are there other partners involved in this one besides the people who brought the money?
Yeah. The main partner is a friend of mine that's an architect. And so he was critical on the design entitlement side. It was kind of he and I. And then we brought in a contractor, just a third party contractor on this one. We're just paying them their fee. I think down the road, maybe they'll be interested in being a partner and part of the deal. But yeah.
Okay. So you and the architect came in and partnered up and then went through the process together. So when you were going through the entitlement and the permitting part, did the architect partner take the lead on that end of things then?
Yeah. Yep. And, part of what we do is we try to find property that's already zoned for what we want to do and try to play within the box, fit within the box, instead of, trying to do a rezone or ask for variances. And so, this site was already zoned for what we wanted to do. The density was already allowed. And so it was a pretty easy, relatively process. There were still challenges, but yeah, he that's what he's good at, right? That's not my expertise. And so, yeah, he ran a lot of that.
Awesome. So the architect partner came in and helped do the entitlements, do the permitting part. You did the underwriting, then bid it out and found a contractor. I'm curious on the contractor component. Did you use someone who was local in that community, or did you find them from where you're at? So they had a 3-hour drive. I'm not sure the size of the community to know. Did they have a...
Yeah, I mean, we did talk to contractors that were local there, but I had a friend that we worked together on other projects in southern Utah, and he had just left to start his own home building company, custom and semi-custom homes, and he's about 45 minutes away in St. George, and so it was easy for them to just bring their sub base. They found some new subcontractors that are local to where we are in Cedar City, and it's worked out really well so far.
Awesome.
So one of the questions that we like to ask is related to community-driven development, because the whole purpose of our podcast is that we want to empower people who are listening to know that they can also make a difference in their community, and you don't necessarily have to have build the next big skyscraper. It could literally be a building that has been dilapidated for a while, and you decide you want to just take advantage of that and maybe build a mixed or renovate and put a mixed use in there or something along those lines. So it can be a project that doesn't have to break the bank, but to empower them to take actions so they can impact their community one building at a time. So, what does a community-driven development mean to you? And then I guess, how does the future projects that you plan to take on, how do you envision them shaping the communities that you're operating in?
Oh, yeah. Great questions. And Kristi and I talked about this on our kind of introduction call about this kind of infill community type development. And yeah, I feel really strongly about it. And in a lot of ways, it would be easier to go raise money to do like a big project, right? A big subdivision or a big apartment community. But I really feel like you have kind of more of an impact by building smaller stuff within existing communities. And in a lot of ways, you have, a bigger impact on those communities by building small and really learning what's missing and what would add value to that community and people living there. And so that's really my approach. I love infill development, building within existing communities and finding, exactly like you said, either a rundown building that we can renovate and repurpose into something else. Like we did that with a co-working office building in a suburban area of Salt Lake that turned out really well. But yeah, I mean, I think, we talked too about, strong towns and some of these other things that are, really call for a swarm of local developers, right, to build out their own community. And I think that's really what we need. The housing problem is bigger than, there's a lot of pieces to that solution, right? And some of that is, bigger home builders and bigger developers. But I think a bigger piece of it needs to be kind of the smaller community-driven infill type developers, right? They know what their community needs. They know what they want, as residents of that community and what would be add value to them. So that's, what I like about what you're doing is you're kind of taking on some of that education and coaching and helping people learn how to do that. And frankly, like there just needs to be more of that, more education, more training around how do you help someone improve their own neighborhood through their own efforts instead of waiting for someone else to come and do it, or having someone come in and do something that doesn't fit with their vision of the community.
Yeah, and we've talked about the different education aspects where you've got the colleges and their courses, but more for private equity or for more institutional stuff. And then you don't really have a lot of, let's get the mom and pop, let's get the boots on the ground going. And I know you've talked about doing some stuff locally and potentially even putting stuff in your college, some courses. Can you maybe talk more about that and what you hope to try and build there too?
Yeah, we have a local group here that it's called the Impact Development Collaborative that we put together. As I was out talking to people kind of in my situation, like I said, it's hard for one person to do everything. And so it was a way for us to get together, kind of share knowledge, help each other out, bounce ideas off of each other. And so we've got that going, which has been really great. But then I love teaching, and I get to do that at the University of Utah. Just during the fall is the only time I'm there teaching. And I really want to do more of that. And so I'm working on putting together some courses, really kind of hands-on courses based around my skill set and my strengths, right? So underwriting, market analysis, finding off-market deals, and hoping to get those started here pretty soon and have them be in person, kind of smaller groups, and have it be more like a workshop type thing where we can work through things together. You actually get, tools that you can take away from the course and knowledge and experience that you can apply in whatever you're doing.
That's awesome. Yeah, the more resources that are available, the better. And obviously, the fact that you're willing to do that at the university level is very helpful. And, I think that if more people took that approach, it would be beneficial for everyone. And, that was one of the impetus for us wanting to start this podcast. And I know, obviously, Kristi's been doing a lot of this work for many years already, but having a medium where we could have people like you come on and share your story and talk about all these different projects that people are doing in their communities. And all it takes is one idea, right? All it takes is one spark to just be like, oh, wow, like maybe this would work on that building that I saw on 15th Street on my on my property. So anyway, so I do appreciate that your willingness to share your insights there. So one of the things that we're going to go ask near the end of the podcast is, what are some of the future projects you're looking to do, if there's any in particular that really catch your eye?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a couple more townhome rental projects in the works. Same kind of idea, right? Looking for overlooked areas to build where there's good fundamentals and good demand, and then looking for infill properties that we can go in and build townhomes. And we've got one of those coming up that we're just kind of gearing up with our attorneys to get everything in place to where we can go start raising money for it. We'll keep building in Cedar City where we have the existing project. And then beyond that, we're in kind of a weird time in the market where a lot of things are hard to make work. And so we're doing a little bit of a pivot and looking at more land development, land entitlement. I get calls from a lot of home builders, and they're kind of dying for finished lots or paper lots. And so I think we're making a little bit of a shift in that direction, at least temporarily, because we see a need there and demand there on more kind of land and entitlement side. But yeah, I mean, long term, I would love to keep building townhomes for rent and build a portfolio for my family and for our investors. And yeah, that's where we're headed.
Yeah, no, and to your point, sometimes you utilizing a separate strategy, especially when the demand's there, right? Sometimes there needs to be a shift in perspective for a period of time, and then you obviously keep your eye on the ball as far as continuing to develop townhomes. But land entitlements, to your point, I mean that's a very unique and seems to be a lucrative way to approach it, especially if you already have the relationships with the home builders that are looking for sites, and you just have to find the sites that fit their needs and entitle them properly and get them subdivided and flip them to other larger developers.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, yeah. So, one of near the end of the podcast, one of the things we like to ask is we have this concept or this concept called the developer vault. So it's a repository that we have created to essentially allow our listeners to access resources that could benefit them in their endeavors. And usually we ask our guests to contribute something to the vault. So I was just kind of curious what you'd be willing to share today.
Yeah, for sure. So I was thinking with this impact development collaborative group that we have here, I built a tool and did kind of a training recently on, how do you know how much you can pay for a piece of property, right? How much can you pay for the land and make a deal work? And so I built kind of a simple little calculator to help you walk through that process. Building something for sale or for rent, how you kind of back into what that number is, what you can pay for a piece of land and still have a deal work. And so, yeah, if that's useful to your community, I'd be happy to add that to the vault.
Yeah, I think it will be for sure.
Very much a common question that people go, okay, well, I found this property and now what? I was just talking to someone earlier. There's literally a church property that's for sale. And he's like, I'm so curious. I keep walking past it. I don't even know, like the broker's asking this, but I don't know what I can pay for it. So kind of walking him through some steps to gather the inputs to put in, but then how does he go through the underwriting? So yeah, that would be very valuable.
Awesome.
Awesome. So as we're wrapping up, how can people support you, connect with you? You've got a lot of things going on. I know we're going to stay in touch because hosting, whether it's workshops or college courses or something like that, like we just need to do these across the country more. So how can people support you, follow you, participate if they're local in what you're doing?
Yeah, the easiest place to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there, and yeah, I try to post a lot of content and things that I'm working on or things that I see going on in our market. Sharing some of my skills and things. You can find out about our events that we do there as well. Yeah, occasionally we do have projects where we're looking for partners, and yeah, LinkedIn is the best place to get a hold of me. And then I like to take those offline as quick as possible and set up a Zoom call or phone call or meet up somewhere. But yeah, that's the easiest place to get a hold of me.
Yeah, LinkedIn's great. And we'll be sure to include your links in the show notes as well so people can access it and try to get in touch with you if they have any questions or want to connect with you in any way. So, well, Josh, obviously we greatly appreciate your time. I got a lot of value from this discussion, so I'm really looking forward to hearing what feedback we get from the audience. For those of you guys who are listening, if you're listening to this in a podcast format, please leave us a 5-star review. It does make a big impact on our ability to reach the largest audience possible. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. It does really make an impact, and we obviously greatly appreciate the support. So thanks again so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.